The streets were empty, except for the occasional sound of a fighter jet flying overhead. Rose and her husband Patrick packed their bags and checked the outside for any sign of danger. They went upstairs to get their daughter Anna, who ran out of the house as soon as she saw them. The neighbors also came out of their houses, some of them running towards the community gate. Rose, Patrick, and Anna joined the crowd, hoping to reach the safe zone. The safe zone was set up at a nearby stadium, where the military was supposed to protect the survivors. The area where they lived was already infected by the virus and was declared a quarantine zone. The military would bomb the place from time to time to eliminate the zombies. Rose and her family made it to the gate, where a military truck was waiting. The soldiers checked the documents and the skin of the people who wanted to get on the truck. Rose let Anna go first, then followed her with Patrick. The soldier who checked their documents asked them a few questions. He noticed Patrick's pale face and pushed him aside. He pointed his gun at him and ordered him to take off his clothes. Rose and Patrick tried to explain, but it was useless. Patrick had no choice but to reveal his bloody wound, which he got from a zombie bite. The soldier refused to let them on the truck and said they had to stay in the quarantine zone. At that moment, another fighter jet flew over them, dropping bombs on the buildings. The soldiers drove away, leaving the people behind. Rose and Patrick ran to a nearby house, where they hid in the living room. They hugged each other, hoping for a miracle. Patrick knew he was dying and told Rose to leave him and go to the stadium to find Anna. Rose refused and said she believed he would survive. She said they had to stay together as a family. She waited for the jet to leave, then went out to look for some antibiotics for Patrick. Rose went to the kitchen alone and searched for anything useful. She heard a noise and grabbed a kitchen knife. She cautiously walked towards the room where the noise came from. She opened the door and saw an old lady sitting on the bed, unable to move. Rose sighed in relief. She heard another noise behind her and called her husband's name. She ran to the living room and saw a pool of blood on the floor. She covered her mouth in horror. She heard a scream. She quickly ran into a small room and listened to the sound outside with fear and despair. She ignored her tears, which were worthless in this situation. Rose gathered her courage and ran out of the house. Her husband, who had turned into a zombie, followed her closely. Rose tried to climb over the wire fence, but her husband caught up with her. Rose kicked his hand away, but he was about to bite her. A man in a military uniform, Spears, shot at Patrick several times. Patrick did not fall down but stumbled towards Spears. Spears shot him a few more times and finally killed him. Rose had only one thought in her mind: to find her daughter Anna. She walked to Spears and hugged him. She begged him to help her find her daughter. She said she would do anything for him in return. A similar scene of life and death was happening elsewhere. A man and his girlfriend were walking to the stadium. They got lost and argued with each other. The woman stood in the middle of the road and complained. Suddenly, a car sped by and hit the woman. She fell to the ground. The woman was seriously injured and coughed up blood. She had internal bleeding from her organs. Her boyfriend saw that she was beyond saving and left her. A man with hearing loss, Ryan, walked slowly from a distance. He noticed the woman lying in the middle of the road. Ryan ran to her. He did not know that the apocalypse had begun. He saw the woman bleeding profusely and did not know what to do. Then, a woman came from the side. She is a short-haired Korean woman. She dragged Ryan away and took him with her. They hid and moved forward. What they did not know was that the woman who was hit by the car died soon. When she died, she became a zombie. The female zombie ran very fast and chased a man. Fortunately, the man managed to escape. The female zombie continued to look for prey and saw a man. The man raised his shotgun and shot at the zombie. The bullets hit the girl zombie's body, but he didn't stop her from approaching. The man quickly hid in the room. The female zombie had to look for another target. She ran into a small yard and looked at the pedestrians on the street next to her through the fence. The female zombie was very smart. She knew she couldn't get past the fence. She turned around and pushed open the small door next to her. She ran out of the garage and turned to the street next to her. She attacked one of the pedestrians with lightning speed. The pedestrian's companion, Lance, escaped by luck. In another corner of the street, an officer was escorting a prisoner. The prisoner was actually the soldier who saved Rose, Spears. He was still wearing a Spears t-shirt, and his face was covered with dried blood. He resisted being escorted. The officer in charge immediately chose a room to use and settled Spears. He then left with another officer to look for a vehicle, leaving one officer to guard the prisoner. Spears tried to explain to the officer that he was not the person they were looking for. The officer ignored him and turned his back to check the situation outside. Spears saw that this was ineffective and changed his strategy. He admitted that he knew the information they wanted and even knew the location of the money. There were millions of cash hidden somewhere. The officer was very tempted and turned his head to look forward to Spears telling him the address. Spears saw that he was hooked and continued to lure him. He asked to go to the bathroom first and said that he would take the officer to the hiding place after that. The officer verbally denied it, but his desire had already made him waver. He agreed to Spears's request, but he could only go to the corner of the living room and could not leave his sight. Spears knew how to negotiate. He first went to the corner to prepare to pee. He moved his handcuffed hands from behind to the front. He made a new request. He said he could only go to the bathroom. The officer reluctantly pressed him with a gun to the bathroom. The small bathroom was a good place to fight back. Spears hit the officer's head with his elbow when he got close to him. He followed up with a series of moves. Spears slammed the officer's head on the sink. When the officer was completely dizzy, Spears picked up the gun and shot him in the head. He then stripped off the officer's clothes and ran out. He reminded himself not to be careless and not to easily believe what others said. Otherwise, he would only end up miserably. The scene switched to another place. A blonde woman was driving a car slowly. Her attention was focused on the map in front of her. Then the car window was knocked. A man stood outside the car. The blonde woman's name was Barbara. She was also looking for the stadium. She lowered the car window a little and saw the man outside. The man told Barbara that he was also going to the stadium with his family. Barbara was very hesitant. Everyone was on their own now. People were everywhere. She politely refused the man's request. The man begged her. He had children to appeal to Barbara's compassion. He had to admit that this trick was very effective. Barbara was moved. After the man repeatedly promised that he was a good person, Barbara opened the door. She sat in the passenger seat. As soon as the man got on the driver's seat, his face changed immediately. He shouted at Barbara to get off the car. Everything was the man's disguise. After Barbara got out of the car, a man suddenly appeared and beat up the man. Barbara saw the situation and got into the car again. In the car, a man and two women looked at each other nervously. The accidentally formed group of three did not trust each other. The driver was a black-bearded man named William Velez. In the front passenger seat was the Korean woman, Sun, and in the back was Barbara. The black-bearded man took the initiative to speak. He talked about his situation, trying to prove himself. Seeing that the two women did not respond, the black-bearded man picked up a bottle of water and drank it. He then passed the water to the Korean woman and Barbara. The tense atmosphere was eased a bit. The Korean woman only spoke Korean. The black-bearded man turned his head and talked to Barbara. Barbara, who had just experienced being cheated, was afraid that the black-bearded man would leave her behind. She rolled up her sleeves and showed her arms full of watches and bracelets. She wanted to prove her value. The black-bearded man turned his head and looked at Barbara's arm. A smile appeared on his face. He just said that humans should be kind. He changed his mind in a second. Seeing the man's strange smile, the Korean woman and Barbara felt uneasy. They had no choice now. The man quickly changed the topic. He first asked Barbara if she had a gun. Then he asked the Korean woman to look for a gun in the trunk. They both found nothing. The man had to continue driving. Barbara looked at the map anxiously. She couldn't understand it at all. The Korean woman grabbed the map and gestured to the black-bearded man to show him the way.